All right, so moving over to the other side of this Super Bowl matchup, we had a rare divisional matchup in the NFC Championship with the Commanders and the Eagles. Of course, the Eagles are coming off of that victory against the Rams last week in the snow. Saquon had a big game. Commanders on their side coming off that victory against the Lions, upsetting the Lions' number one seed there. And look, the final score 55-23 looks a lot worse than it really was. Eagles kind of poured it on late in the game, but this one, once again, huge offensive game from Saquon Barkley, man. And once again, Eagles head back to the Super Bowl to face the Chiefs.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice to have the divisional game. We talked about this kind of as it was happening. Like, it's cool to see these teams play for a third time. But man, the first time they matched up, the Commanders came up just short. 26-18. Second time, uh, Jalen Hurts goes down. Commanders went down in a hole and then came back and then took out Kenny Pickett and the Eagles 36-33. Yeah, so pretty close games. This one, uh, not quite so much. And the score is a little more dramatic than it should have been, but they were still put to bed pretty quickly, pretty early. Um, but it started off seeming like maybe they had some fight, so we'll look at it on paper. And we'll talk about how the game went. For the Eagles, Jalen Hurts had a pretty good day in the air. 20 for 28, only 8 passes missed, 246 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. On the ground, he had 16 yards and 3 touchdowns. The tush push boosting those stats there. I'm not gonna entirely shame the man for getting his touchdowns, but it's not a fun thing to endure as a football fan, and especially when you got a guy like Saquon. Just let him get the touchdowns. But Jalen Hurts 4 total touchdowns on the day, 246 yards in the air, only 8 missed passes. Still going to complement the passing game here. Saquon, however, 118 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns for him. Two of them, I mean, he started the game with 2 touches, 74 yards, and 2 touchdowns, which is insane. And he kept up the pace a little bit there. I mean, definitely slowed down, boosted by that first play, but certainly could have been a little more active. They didn't entirely need him to be as active. Surprising to me as a Clemson fan and student, Will Shipley appeared in
Right.
this game as quite the big name on special teams. He came up with a forced fumble, which was not a play I was expecting to see. And then he got some time somewhat early in the game, and then got a lot of it towards the end of the game when they were like, "Hey, this is done." And he racked up 77 rushing yards and a touchdown as well. His touchdown put them up in the 50s. So not the most impactful playoff touchdown, but I'm happy to see him out there thriving. AJ Brown led the Eagles in the air, 69 yards and a touchdown, and then Kenneth Gainwell, Zach Bond, and Reed Blankenship all recovered fumbles from the Commanders. That's going to be the big story here. Is the Commanders, after last week not turning the ball over one time, could not hold on to it in this week. And of course, as I said, Shipley forced that fumble, and then Quinion Mitchell picked off Jaden Daniels for the one interception he had. Turning to the Commanders, Daniels went 29 for 48, 255 yards. Pretty good day for him as well. Definitely worse completion than Hurts, but not a horrible game for him. 1 for 1 on the touchdown interception ratio, and he led the team in rushing with 48 yards and a touchdown. But this game got pretty out of hand for the running game pretty quickly, so they needed to rely on that passing attack, which had two pretty clear stars. Zach Ertz led them in the air with 104 yards. Terry McLaurin had 51 yards and got the touchdown. And then three people recovered fumbles. That means people had to fumble. Austin Eckler, Jeremy McNichols, and De'Ami Brown were the culprits of the Commanders fumbling. And truthfully, I mean, we can look at fumbles a lot in a close game and definitely say like, oh, that's why they lost because they fumbled the ball here. But even in this big blowout, the Commanders' inability to hold on to the ball and inability to defend the run put them in a grave, right? When you come out, you kill 7 minutes, you go up 3-0. Not a bad formula. You definitely want to get touchdowns usually, or try to get a little more out of a long drive, but you still kill time and you got points on the board, so you can't really be upset with it. Then immediately after that, the Eagles in one play, 18 seconds, get a 60-yard touchdown from Saquon Barkley. At that point, you kind of got to go, hey, that's not good, but we took a lot of time off the clock. We can do that again. If we can score a touchdown this time, we're up 10-7. And then in 4 plays, you fumble, and they score a touchdown again. Saquon Barkley's next touch is a 14-yard touchdown there. Sorry, not 14 yard, 4 yard touchdown over there to the end zone, and then you get a field goal and it's 14-6, and from there, it looks like maybe there's some hope because the Eagles miss a field goal and you score a touchdown and it's 12-14, and that would be the last time that I think the Commanders would have hope in this game, because the Eagles would score, make it 20-12, and the Commanders fumble again immediately, and then the Eagles score again. Commanders get a field goal. It's halftime. Punt, Eagles touchdown, Commanders touchdown. That doesn't really help too much, but it puts some spirit in there. And then you fumble again. They score a touchdown. You turn it over on downs. They score a touchdown. You throw a pick. They score a touchdown. in turnover on downs, which is at that point is 55-23. So yeah, I had high hopes for the Commanders to make this one a battle. I have obviously been a big fan of them throughout the season. Didn't pick them in this game. I wasn't gonna lean on my fanness that much in this one. But boy, did I not expect the Eagles to come out and put that much of a whooping on them. That Commanders rushing defense is just not that strong, and I don't know what happened to them, but they completely forgot how to hold on to the football, and I do think that just like continued to put them into a hole anytime they got any sense of light in this game.
Yeah, I mean, maybe, they had a good drive in, about the mid third quarter. Got it to 34-23. Obviously, it's still an 11-point deficit there. But yeah, the fumbles, I mean, again, you said it, usually when we talk about turnovers being an issue in the game, causing the team to lose, it's a close game. Just last week, Ravens, Bills, the turnovers in those games, the miscues there. But you're right. I mean, this every single time that they had an opportunity to do something, they fumbled. So I mean, you get yourself down 14-3, like you said, because of a fumble. You get yourself down 27-12 again because of a fumble. You get yourself down, 41-23, which at that point it's early fourth quarter. It's basically over, and you haven't been able to stop them on the run yet because of a fumble. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think both of us agree. We both picked the Eagles. You said that the Commanders, we thought they would have a good game, but you cannot win a game like without holding on to the ball. I mean, it's just as simple as that. You're just giving them free possessions, and a team, maybe a team that didn't have much of an offense. If it's like a team, say, I don't know, like I mean, somebody like the Raiders. I mean, you take a team like that really can't score. They're not going to be able to capitalize off of those turnovers. I mean, fine. You still don't want to turn the ball over. That's okay. But you give a team like the Eagles that, although they hadn't been super explosive, in the passing game, for a lot of this season, they still have a great offense. And one of the biggest stories for me going into this game, obviously Jalen Hurts possibly being hurt, how would that affect them? I feel like a lot of people probably picked the Commanders because of Jalen Hurts, possibly being hurt. But he looked fine to me. He was running. He got 3 touchdowns. Of course, he had tush pushes. Of course, obviously, but he looked fine to me. He's a out the pocket, throw the ball. I mean, he looked okay. So early on, that was a non-issue with him and his knee there. So between the fumbling, between Jalen Hurts being good to go and he had a good game, passing and running the ball, and then like you mentioned, Saquon, had 3 touchdowns, so he had a good game. Obviously getting in the end zone, he had that huge touchdown first play, one play, 60 yards. But the fact that he only had 15 carries, he averaged 8 yards a carry. You only needed him to have 15 carries in this game. Jalen Hurts had 10. Some of those being the push touchdowns there. I, the like you cannot win a game like that. You just can't. So on defensively for Washington, we know that hasn't been their strength this season. We get that, but defensively, that's really the main reason why they lost. I understand the turnovers, but if you turn the ball over and you're able to at least stop them from scoring touchdowns, I mean, even if you force field goals, like you're still in the game. It's gonna be rough, but you're still in the game. But letting them get touchdowns every single time, you can't win. So look, at the end of the day, Jaden Daniels, he played as well as could have, all things considered. But Eagles are simply a better team, and we're not going to make our Super Bowl picks right now. But I do see a pathway for the Eagles to win. Obviously, Chiefs are probably going to be the favorite, of course. But this was the best performance. I mean, 55 points. I mean, obviously that's crazy, but take out all those touchdowns at the end of the game. This was the best Eagles performance we've seen in quite a while. So you take some of that, you ball it up, you bring it to the Super Bowl in 2 weeks. We might be raising the banner for the Philadelphia Eagles, but at the end of the day, they absolutely deserve this win as one.
I think I'll give a little bit of credit to the Eagles for the end of the game as well, since you throw in. I mean, Jalen Hurts is still out there, but you throw in people like Will Shipley. You let some different guys try to get out there and get around, and you still play well. Now, again, they didn't switch to an entirely bench lineup or anything, so it's not like they completely backed off. It's a division rival. I'm sure Nick Sirianni was going to do everything he could to run
Oh
this
yeah,
one
of
up,
course.
especially considering the way the previous game went between these two teams. But I respect the Eagles for holding on to the gas. The Commanders a few times tried to make it scary, tried to make it a closer game, and then they would fumble it, as we've clearly discussed here. So I do respect the Eagles for holding on and saying, you know what, no, 24 or 34-23, not enough. We can make it 41. You know what, we can make it 48. And you know what, if they're going to throw us a pick, we can make it 55. I respect that play style, especially considering it's a division rival, and I hope they bring that energy into the Chiefs. Against that Chiefs team, there's never a moment that you can back off the gas and decide like, we got them, like we got them in a hole here. Not going to work, and I'm sure they know that. So that's a good way, I think, to play against a Washington team that would have done the same to them for sure. Dan Quinn is just as much of a maniac and deciding to push the ball every fourth down he can. Um, so
Yeah.
I respect the Eagles for the way they handled the end of this game, and I think even outside that fourth quarter, like you said, this is certainly the best we've seen of the Eagles this playoff. They had some questionable moments at the beginning, facing a surprisingly tough Packers team. So I think this is fun. I do see pathways that Philadelphia could bring one back home. Um, we'll make our picks later in the week. I'll have to think about this for a little bit. These are two really good teams. Eagles could have easily been the one seeds, but they're not. So not a battle of the one seeds, but I think two good football teams matched up in the Super Bowl, and we have a chance to maybe see the first three-peat in history. And I don't know who I'm picking, but I can say I don't want that to happen. That doesn't mean I won't pick the Chiefs, but we'll see how that goes. Or we see Saquon Barkley get his ring on the new team. So we'll think about that before we make our picks later on in the week.
Yeah, and just to close out, man, like the Eagles, like you said, they know going into this game against the Chiefs. After how things ended with the holding call on Bradbury a couple years ago, and Jalen Hurts, I think, did have that one fumble. He was pretty much fantastic outside of that. They know they cannot make any mistakes, and the Chiefs, even more now than ever, they feed off those mistakes and a little bit of ref ball too. But they, since they lost Tyreek, traded them to Miami, they played a different style of football. So even if the Eagles, they're going to go in expecting to run the ball, of course, try to put up some points. They know all it takes is one or two mistakes to lose. So, yeah, I think it definitely will be a good game, and you'll see our picks next week.